I got the golden one, mother. We are going to be rich. Adana's eyes sparkled with excitement. She quickly locked the door behind them and together they broke the calabash. But instead of treasure, a swarm of spirits burst forth, filling the room with their malevolent presence. The spirits circled Adana and Chuka, their voices filled with fury. For your lies, your greed and your ingratitude, you shall be punished, they cried. In a village in Umwaya, there lived a man named Okoro. Okoro had a wife named Adana, and though their marriage was filled with love, it remained barren. For years, Adana's womb stayed empty, and while Okoro loved her dearly, the whispers of the village grew louder. A man without an heir is like a tree without roots, the elders will say. One evening, Okoro and Adana sat under a tree that shaded their home. The air was thick with unspoken thoughts until Okoro finally broke the silence. Adana, he began, his voice laced with sorrow. The elders have spoken to me. They say that I must take another wife, one who can bear me a child. Adana looked at him with tears in her eyes. I understand, Okoro, she said. I want nothing more than to give you an heir. But if it's the will of the gods that I cannot, then I will accept another woman in our home. With a heavy heart, Okoro married a second wife, Amara, a woman of beauty and kindness. Unlike Adana, Amara was blessed with fertility, and soon after their marriage, she conceived. When the time came, she bore a son, a boy named Nnamdi. Okoro's heart swelled with joy, but fate dealt him a cruel hand. Amara died in childbirth, leaving Nnamdi motherless and the household shrouded in grief. In the days following Amara's death, Adana found herself at a crossroads of emotions. Jealousy and compassion waged a silent battle within her heart. She could not deny the pangs of envy she felt for the child who had succeeded where she had failed. Yet as she looked upon Nnamdi's innocent face, a surge of pity overwhelmed her. Adana, Okoro said one evening as they sat together, Nnamdi has no mother. I know it is much to ask, but will you care for him as if he were your own? Adana sighed. I will care for him, she promised, her voice soft but resolute. I will raise him as my own son, true to her word. Adana took Nnamdi into her arms and cared for him with a devotion that surprised even herself. She fed him, bathed him, and rocked him to sleep in the quiet hours of the night. The villagers who had once whispered about her barrenness now spoke of her kindness and generosity. Years passed and the gods smiled upon Adana. She conceived and bore a son of her own, a boy named Chuka. The birth of Chuka brought new joy into the household, but it also rekindled the embers of jealousy in Adana's heart. As Chuka grew, so did her resentment towards Nnamdi, who had become a strong and handsome young boy, known for his diligence and respect. Nnamdi, Adana would call, her voice sharp as she gave him yet another chore. Fetch water from the river, sweep the compound, tend to the goats, make sure everything is done before Chuka wakes up from his nap. Nnamdi, ever obedient, would nod and set to work, his muscles growing under the weight of his tasks. Meanwhile, Chuka, pampered and spoiled by his mother, did nothing but play, his days filled with idle pleasure. Adana, Okoro warned one day as he watched Chuka laze while Nnamdi walked. You are doing a disservice to Chuka by allowing him to be so idle. A child untrained will bring shame upon his mother. Mark my words, if you do not correct him, his ways will bring you sorrow. But Adana brushed off her husband's warnings, convinced that her son deserved nothing but the best. She continued to favor Chuka, turning a blind eye to his growing arrogance, while Nnamdi, through his hard work, earned the admiration of all who knew him. One fateful day, Adana sent Nnamdi to the river to fetch water. As Nnamdi dipped his small wooden fetcher into the water, a mighty wave surged and swept the fetcher away. Panic gripped him, for he knew how much Adana valued every tool in their home. Oh no, he whispered to himself, his heart pounding. If I return without the fetcher, Mama will be furious. In his desperation, Nnamdi fell to his knees at the river's edge and began to cry. O river so vast and wide, return my fetcher, do not hide. For if you do not heed my call, I shall tell the village all. As he sang, the water before him began to ripple. And from the depths of the river emerged the figure of ethereal beauty. The river goddess stood before Nnamdi, her eyes filled with compassion. "Why do you weep, child?" she asked, her voice as soothing as the breeze. Nnamdi looked up, awestruck by her presence. "My fetcher," he stammered. "The river took it away and I cannot return home without it." The goddess smiled gently. "You have a good heart, child. I will help you." She waved her hand, and before Nnamdi appeared two calabashes, one modest and small, the other large and golden. "Your fetcher lies in one of these," she said. "Choose wisely." Nnamdi hesitated, his eyes drawn to the golden calabash. What a beautiful calabash. It must contain a lot of nice things, he thought to himself. But if I take it home, I will receive the beating of my life. Mama will say I stole it and wouldn't believe me if I told her the river goddess gave it to me. Moreover, what I need is my fetcher, not a golden calabash. Nnamdi knew better than to let his greed cloud his judgment, and with that, he chose the small calabash. The goddess nodded approvingly. "Take this calabash home, break it in the privacy of your room, and you shall find what you seek." Nnamdi bowed deeply, his heart filled with gratitude. "Thank you, great goddess," he said, before turning to make the journey back home. When he arrived, his father was waiting by the door. "Nnamdi, my son," Okoro called out. "What has taken you so long?" Nnamdi hurried to his father's side, his face flushed with excitement. "Father, you won't believe what happened. I lost the fetcher in the river. And as I cried for help, the river goddess appeared and gave me this calabash. She said I should break it in my room." Okoro's eyes widened in astonishment. "The river goddess? Truly the gods are watching over you, my son. Let's see what lies within." Together they entered Nnamdi's room. With a deep breath, Nnamdi struck the calabash against the ground. The moment it shattered, a dazzling array of gold, jewels, and treasures poured out, filling the room with a warm golden light. Among the riches lay the small wooden fetcher, perfectly intact. "Father," Nnamdi exclaimed, his voice trembling with disbelief, "look! The fetcher is here, and so much more." Okoro was speechless, his heart swelling with pride. He embraced Nnamdi tightly. "The gods have favored you, my son. You have brought great fortune to our family." As they reveled in their newfound wealth, Adana, who had overheard the commotion, came rushing in, her eyes widening in disbelief at the sight of the treasures that lay before her. For a moment, she was stunned into silence, but she forced a smile. "Nnamdi, my dear," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "you have made us all proud. Tell me, how did you come by such riches?" Nnamdi recounted the story of his encounter with the river goddess. Adana listened, but her mind was already racing with thoughts of how she would ensure that Chuka also received such fortune. That night, Adana lay awake, her heart twisted with envy. "Nnamdi must not outshine my Chuka," she muttered to herself. "I will make sure of it." The next morning, Adana called Chuka to her side. "Chuka, my son," she said, "you must go to the river today and fetch water, just as Nnamdi did. But this time, you must make sure you meet the river goddess and ask for a calabash. She will give you one filled with treasures, just as she did for Nnamdi." Chuka, lazy and uninterested, frowned. "But mother, why should I go? I don't want to fetch water." Adana's eyes narrowed as she tried to persuade her son. "Listen to me, Chuka," she said, her voice low and conspiratorial. "Nnamdi brought back gold and jewels from the river. Imagine how much more you could bring if you do as I say. You could be the richest boy in the village." At the mention of riches, Chuka's eyes lit up with greed. "All right, mother," he said, "I'll go to the river." When Chuka reached the river, he stood at its edge, waiting impatiently for the wave to take away his fetcher. But the river remained calm, its surface undisturbed by any ripple. "Come on," Chuka muttered in frustration. He kicked at the water, but it remained placid. Growing more impatient by the minute, he finally threw the fetcher into the river with all his might. The fetcher disappeared beneath the water, and Chuka began to cry, though his voice lacked the sincerity that had marked Nnamdi's lament. "The river stole my fetcher," he shouted. "Bring it back or I will tell everyone what you have done." To his surprise, the river goddess emerged, her expression calm but with a hint of scrutiny in her eyes. "Why do you cry, my child?" she asked. Chuka, feeling emboldened by his mother's words, quickly replied, "The river took my fetcher, and I want it back." The goddess regarded him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. Then, with a wave of her hand, she summoned the lost fetcher from the depth and placed it before him on the shore. "Here is your fetcher," she said simply. But Chuka, driven by greed, frowned. "What about the calabash?" he demanded, his tone imperious. The river goddess tilted her head slightly. "Calabash?" she asked, feigning ignorance. "Yes," Chuka pressed, "the calabash you gave to Nnamdi. I want one too." "I see," she said, as a shadow of displeasure crossed her face. She presented the same two calabashes, one modest and small, the other large and golden. "Choose wisely," she said. Chuka's eyes gleamed with greed as he reached for the golden calabash. Without a word of thanks, he snatched it from the goddess's hands and ran back home, eager to claim his treasures. He left his fetcher behind. When he arrived, Adana was waiting anxiously by the door. "Did you get it?" she asked, her voice trembling with anticipation. Chuka nodded, holding up the golden calabash. "I got the golden one, mother. We are going to be rich." Adana's eyes sparkled with excitement. She quickly locked the door behind them, and together they broke the calabash. But instead of treasure, a swarm of spirits burst forth, filling the room with their malevolent presence. The spirits circled Adana and Chuka, their voices filled with fury. "For your lies, your greed, and your ingratitude, you shall be punished," they cried. The spirits descended upon them, delivering a harsh beating that left Adana and Chuka bruised and broken. The cries of their pain echoed through the house, reaching the ears of Okoro and Nnamdi, who rushed to the door but found it barred. When the spirits finally vanished, Okoro forced the door open. He found Adana and Chuka lying on the ground, their bodies battered and their spirits broken. The golden calabash lay shattered at their feet, its promise of wealth turned to ashes. Okoro looked at his wife and son with sorrow in his eyes. "This is the price of greed and dishonesty," he said quietly. "The gods have shown no mercy to those who seek to deceive them." From that day forward, Adana treated Nnamdi with the respect he deserved, her jealousy replaced by a deep sense of humility. Chuka, having learned the hard way that laziness and deceit will bring nothing but ruin, became a more responsible young man, though the memory of the spirit's wrath never left him. As for Nnamdi, he continued to grow into a man of strength and wisdom, his story becoming a beacon of hope and a reminder to all in the village that honesty, humility, and hard work were the true treasures that the gods favored. My listeners, I hope you have enjoyed this story. Fun fact, my mom told me this story when I was just a child. Now as I share this tale with you, I hope you tell it to your children and younger siblings. To the young ones who are just beginning to understand the world around them, let them learn from Nnamdi's honesty and humility, and from the folly of greed and deceit. In doing so, may they grow into adults who value hard work, cherish honesty, and understand that the choices they make will shape not only their lives, but the lives of those who come after them. Until we meet again in the next video, be kind and stay blessed.